I was recently asked by a few different artists some very similar questions about my charcoal work. I was asked how I draw so well with charcoal, and could I teach them to draw with charcoal? And straight away, from just those two questions, my answer is no. There's a huge mistake in what those people were asking and how they were asking it. And that mistake is massively going to inhibit their ability to work with charcoal and hold back what they could potentially achieve with it. So there's three reasons why you're going to have clicked on this video. One is that you're an artist and you either work with charcoal or you want to work with charcoal at some point in the future. Two, you like the thumbnail and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. Or three, you're a fan and you just can't resist this handsome mug. For those in category 3, hey, how's it going? If you're in category 1 or 2, I'm going to give you some of my best tips that I think are essential for working with charcoal. And I'm going to explain the biggest mistake that everyone makes when they ask how to draw with charcoal. As I give you my tips, listen to what I'm saying and see if you can work out what that mistake actually is. When I started working with charcoal, I went to my local art store and I bought the cheapest pack of charcoal that I could find. It was a pack of willow soft charcoal sticks, and I thought I was going to be able to make a masterpiece with that charcoal. I was wrong. The first tip that I can give you is try to get hold of as many varieties of charcoal as you can. Soft, vine or willow charcoal, harder charcoal, compressed charcoal, charcoal powder, charcoal pencils, whatever you can get your hands on, grab it and use it. Having a variety helps with creating interesting and realistic looking pieces. Each type works slightly differently. They produce different marks, some lighter, some darker, and that variety helps to add the different values to your piece. Values are how light or how dark something is. And if you can get those values right, it goes a long way to making your piece look 3D and have a lot of form and structure. When I'm painting, I try and simplify everything into 5 or 6 values. But you have colour to help you out a little bit, establishing that form and making the painting look that little bit more interesting. With charcoal, you don't have colour to fall back on. So to really make a painting interesting, you've got to have a huge range of values. Sometimes 8 to 10 different values, ranging from an almost black to an almost white of the paper. To achieve a full range of values, one, you need a lot of different charcoals, but you also need a couple of different erasers. Erasers really do make a massive difference in producing those different values and layering the charcoal in different ways. I personally use 2 different types of erasers. I have a putty eraser, and then I have a Tombow mono eraser for really, really delicate lines and smaller details. The harder you press with the charcoal, the harder it is to erase that charcoal from the surface of the paper. So it's really important that before you start your piece, you plan out where those lights are going to be, because you don't want to have so much charcoal in those areas that you can't erase it. If you've ever painted with watercolours, it's a very, very similar technique. You don't paint the areas that you want the lightest or the whitest. You leave the paper showing through. And it's exactly the same with charcoal. You can work over the top of charcoal with white pencil or white paint. And I know a lot of artists that do this, and it looks fantastic, but it can make the white go a little bit bluey. And personally, I just think you lose that effectiveness of the monochromatic aspect of charcoal when you've got like little subtle blues in there. So I don't really like to do it. I make sure that my whites are just the pure white of the canvas or the pure white of the paper showing through. Okay, before I give you my last and most important tip, there's 2 things. 1, have you worked out what the mistake was? And 2, if you're enjoying the video and you'd like to see more art and more art tips, then give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. So I keep on getting asked, how do I draw with charcoal? And in everything that I just said, all those tips that I've just given you, I never once said the words charcoal drawing. That is the biggest mistake a beginner can make. Assuming that using charcoal is going to be drawing just because it's a dry medium. Using coloured pencils or graphite pencils, that's drawing. If you approach charcoal the same way as you would with graphite, you are not going to have the effect that you want. It's going to feel like the charcoal is fighting against everything that you want it to do. It's going to be messy, it's going to be imprecise, and you just shouldn't try to draw with charcoal. My biggest and most important tip that I ever learned was that you shouldn't try to draw with charcoal, you should treat it like a painting. I've already mentioned that you use watercolour techniques to leave the white of the paper showing through, but it's so much more than that. Charcoal is such a malleable medium that's got movement and flow to it very similar to paint. The absolute game changer for me was when I started to think about those charcoal sticks, those pencils, that powder, as a way to apply that charcoal to the surface and not a way to draw. Then you can push, you can pull, you can smudge, you can blend, you can move that charcoal across the surface with a variety of different tools. We've mentioned erasers, but blending stumps, tissue, paper, cotton wool, brushes, even your fingers, literally anything can be used to manipulate and push and pull that charcoal over the surface. Really, the charcoal itself isn't the most important thing about the process of creating a charcoal piece. It's strange, I know, but the most important thing is what you do with that charcoal after you've applied it to the surface. And the smoother that surface, the easier it is to manipulate that charcoal. I personally use the Fabriano 300 GSM watercolour paper. I use the hot pressed variety, which is much smoother, and it's really good because it comes in large rolls, which I can use for my charcoal drawings like the line I'm doing today. If you'd like to learn more about my charcoal technique and the tools that I use for all of my charcoal drawings like this one, then check out this video here. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.